Building the need plus conservative bucket. This is a follow-up to the 3 by 3 risk grid video. If you watched my last video, you know the 3 by 3 grid. That is need, want, aspiration on one side, and your risk profile that is conservative, moderate, aggressive on the other. Today, I am zooming into exactly one cell, which is top left need bucket along with a conservative investor risk profile. I'm picking this first for a reason. It's the tightest, least forgiving cell in the entire grid. If you get this one wrong, the damage isn't I made less money. The damage is I don't have money when I needed it. So before we proceed, let's recap quickly. A need bucket is where money tied to the goal that cannot fail. It could be school fees, a down payment, a medical fund, retirement income you actually have to live on. The goal doesn't care about your personality. It just has to be there on time and in full. A risk profile that is conservative is someone with low tolerance for watching their number go down, usually because they are close to needing the money or because a drawdown would hurt them practically or emotionally, not just financially. Who this bucket is actually for. Before the mechanics, let's be precise about who lands in this cell. I see people misclassify themselves here all the time. You're in need plus conservative if the goal has a hard deadline, not someday, but a real date. For example, a school admission, a wedding, college fee, a loan down payment, EMI free house purchase. Missing the target amount creates a real problem. You have to borrow, delay, or compromise on something important. You know that if this money dropped, say 15-20%, right before you need it, you would not calmly wait for a recovery. You'd panic and you'll be forced to sell at the worst time. If your question is, can I afford for this money to be smaller than expected? If the answer is no, you fall in this cell. Retirees living off their corpus, parents with a child's admission 2 or 3 years out, anyone saving for a near-term big ticket purchase, this is your cell. So the core allocation logic is, here the shape I use for this bucket, roughly 75 to 80% high quality debt and fixed income with 15 to 20% of large cap or index equity, and effectively pretty much nothing left for mid, small cap, commodities, or any other allocation. So why not 100% debt? If we are being this conservative, there are two reasons for that. First is inflation. Pure debt at 6 to 7% post-tax barely keeps pace with real-world cost inflation for things like education and healthcare, which often run at 10% per annum kind of inflation. A small equity sleeve is what protects your purchasing power, not just your nominal numbers. And second reason is most of these need-based goals aren't tomorrow. Even a near-term goal is usually a few years out, say 2 to 5 years out, and not just in months, but years. That's just enough time for a small, disciplined equity allocation to add value without materially increasing the risk of shortfall. The equity portion here is doing a very specific, narrow job. Inflation protection, not growth. That distinction matters when you move next to different other cells. Let's get specific. This is the part most people skip, the debt sleeve, in order of priority. So first is the PPF EPF bucket. If you have room left in annual limits or Horizon allows you to lock in your money for a high quality debt allocation, this is your best bet. It is sovereign backed, tax free, and the lock-in is a feature here, not a bug, because it removes the temptation to touch the money early. The second option you have is target maturity funds or defined maturity debt funds matched to your goal. If your goal is in 2028, you hold a fund maturing in 2028. This is where the risk is the least because that removes interest rate guesswork entirely. The third option you have is high-rated corporate bonds. that is AAA-rated plus. For the portfolio needed more liquidity, this will have more liquidity than PPF or locked in. This will be more liquid than other options. And the last one is liquid or ultra short term debt fund. For the last 6 to 12 months before the goal date, everything should ideally glide into this category. This is your final don't touch the principal parking spot. You may be thinking, why not arbitrage fund? Arbitrage funds are not purely risk free, especially if you're a horizon of 3 months or plus. Even arbitrage funds can be evaluated because they are more tax advantageous. But the category has to be pretty much no volatility, where liquid funds would categorize the best. So in the equity sleeve where we have 15 to 20%, you should ideally be looking at large cap funds or Nifty or Sensex index fund. So if you are a new one, then I would highly suggest it should be index fund, which I would categorize as least risky because it is purely buying the index. So when you're investing in index, the chances of not meeting the index level of return will not be there. Even if you consider the expenses, it would be very close to the index return. So no flexi cap should be in this because flexi cap also get into mid cap, and there should not be any sector level bets or active fund manager taking a style risk or something. This sleeve should behave as boring as possible while you are still in equity. So there would be least amount of active management involved. And even if some bit of active management is there, it would be restricted to only large cap categories. So how many funds you should be good with? If you're investing in an index fund, one fund is good enough. So you have Nifty 50 or Nifty Next fund, which will cover the top 100 companies in India. So those two funds are good enough to meet this category. So what deliberately does not belong in this bucket, and I have already pointed out, but I'm repeating it, it would be mid cap or small cap funds. The volatility profile is simply not compatible with this bucket. Then you have thematic or sectoral funds. Concentrated bets have no place in need level of categorization. Direct individual stocks, anything to do with lock-in that extends past your goal date other than PPF or EPF is also not recommended. Here is an example. Say you are building a 20 lakh corpus for your child's college admission, which is 4 years away, and you're a conservative investor. Then this should be the segregation of your allocation. Approximately PPF would have around 25%, target maturity funds would have 30%, highly rated bonds, corporate bonds will have 20%, and the rest will be in liquid funds. You can also think of arbitrage funds in this case, since the requirement is few years out. But you should ideally be moving everything towards liquid fund as the goal gets closer. So it would be ideally between 6 to 12 months, you should have money primarily in the liquid fund, pretty much everything. But since we are 4 years away, it's not needed today. You can also allocate 15 to 20% into an equity fund. Although we are saying we are 4 years away from our requirement, we are still allocating equity here. Ideally, we say that if your goal is 5 year plus, you should be thinking about equity. But since we are investing in index, so the risk is less, but risk will still be there in terms of volatility. So you can even reduce this and probably increase corporate bonds or target maturity fund just to be even further safer in terms of your allocation. Of course, what I'm talking today is not to be copied as such. It's just a directional sense in terms of what you can think when it comes to investing. But each person will have its own nuances they have to deal with, and you have to tailor it accordingly. So work with an advisor to really tailor it to your requirement. So this is the part people get wrong most often. They build the allocation once and forget it. In need plus conservative bucket, the equity sleeve should mechanically shrink as the goal approaches, not based on how the markets are doing, but based on the calendar. So a simple rule is, in the last 12 to 18 months before the goal date, start systematically moving the equity portion into liquid funds, regardless of whether equity markets are up or down at that moment. By the time you are 6 months out, this bucket should be almost entirely of liquid funds. If you want to be conservative, make it 6 to 12 months liquid before the goal is required. The goal is peace of mind on the day you actually need funds, not a few extra percentage points of return in the final stretch, because it can go down also. You don't want to lose out, say, 5% less than what you actually need. That's why you do not take any risk as the goal gets closer. So often these are the mistakes people commit. Mistake number one, reaching for yield. Someone sees a corporate bond, fund, or NCD offering 2% more and moves the whole debt allocation into it without noticing the credit rating drop from AAA to AA minus or even below. In this bucket, a little extra yield is never worth a little extra credit risk. Mistake number two, forgetting to de-risk. The equity sleeve was set at 20% 3 years ago. Markets did well. It is now 30% of the portfolio. And you did not rebalance it. It is important that you rebalance it and make it go back to 20%. Mistake number three, treating conservative as do nothing. People put everything in savings account or FD and call it done. That's not conservative. That's just inflation risk bearing a disguise. Discipline within debt and fixed income still matters. This bucket needs active, not passive construction, but active not in terms of the fund being actively managed, but active in terms of how you are allocating your overall split of money.